Everybody. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the North Sydney Local Planning Panel. We're here today to consider or to provide recommendations to the Council on two planning proposals, and there are not the required number of submissions, but nonetheless, this is a meeting that is available and recorded. And I will just reiterate what I often say is with planning proposals, this is the beginning of the process, and that we are purely advising a recommendation to the Council in terms of whether we as a panel would recommend to the Council that it proceed to a gateway consideration. So that is our role for planning proposals, as opposed to development applications where we do the determinations. So without further ado, I'd just like to introduce the panel. I've introduced myself, Jan Morell. I'm the chair of the panel, and I have some 40 years experience as a town planner, 14 years as a commissioner with the Land and Environment Court, and chief planner of councils, and working in the Department of Private Practice. And my only role these days is to sit on local planning panels and also state planning panels. And I have no conflict of interest with the two items that are on the agenda today. I'll ask the other panellists to introduce themselves. Thank you. Peter.
Good afternoon, Peter Brennan. I'm also a town planner with over 40 years experience. I was a previous Director of Planning at Waverley Council. I also sit on a number of other council's planning panels and have sat on the state, local and regional panels. Like Jan, my only role these days is to be an independent expert on planning panels.
And conflicts?
No conflicts of interest in respect to either item on the agenda.
Thank you. And Ken?
Yes, I'm Ken Robinson. I'm a resident of North Sydney, and I'm the community representative on the panel. I have 30 or 40 years experience as an environmental scientist and planner, and have retired from those positions for quite some time. And I have no conflicts of interest.
Very well, thank you very much. So we'll now go into the first item on the agenda, which is 153 and 157 Walker Street, North Sydney. And this is to amend the North Sydney LEP. You can be assured that the panel members have inspected the site individually in this COVID situation, and we have the benefit of all the documentation that has been referred to us from the council and available on council's website as such. I have, if I can just ask who is in the meeting today, I have Nathan Michael. Is Nathan Michael here?
I'm Jacob Dwyer from Ethos Urban. I'll be speaking on behalf of Nathan Michael, who's the owner of 157 Walker Street, or
right.
the owner of 157 Walker.
Nathan Michael's not here. Okay, rightio then. And we have James Kingston from Shaw Reynolds.
Yes, James Kingston from Shaw Reynolds. I'll be speaking on behalf of the applicant for this planning proposal.
Thank you. And Mark Damick?
Mark Damick, yeah, I'm from Architectus. We are the architects for the planning submission.
Thank you. And I've got already Jacob Dwyer and Rick Miller. I have you here as observing.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Yep. Could you just lift your camera a little bit so that? Okay. There, that's better. Yep.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm in the hands of the applicant's team as to how you wish to address the panel.
I might address first, if that's okay, Madam Chair, and then be followed by Marco.
Yes, thank you. So James, thank you, James.
So yes, my name's James Kingston. I'm a solicitor at Shaw Reynolds Lawyers, and I speak on behalf of the applicant today. By way of background, this matter last came before the panel on 29 September 2021. Following this, the applicant met with council on 13 October 2021 And during this time, council have been considering increases to commercial tower setbacks in the North Sydney CBD. This work was reported to the council late last year, but deferred due to insufficient feasibility assessment. We note that the council staff who are considering the planning proposal are also working on the project to increase commercial tower setbacks. So given this, a rezoning review application was lodged in early February 2022, but not before additional material requested by council staff was provided on 7 February 2022. The council report raises 6 points, which council recommend should result in the PP not proceeding to Gateway, and I'll briefly address each of these now. The first point relates to strategic merit. And in this regard, I refer the panel to section B in part 3 of the APP planning proposal document. And I note that the North Sydney Local Strategic Planning Statement and the North Sydney CBD Public Domain Strategy have been considered in length by the applicant, and the proposal positively encourages and realises each of the objectives and principles set out in these documents. The second point refers to the North District Plan. Marco will address these matters in more detail. However, I briefly note that the proposed laneway works to Little Walker Street and the 4 metre reverse setback that's proposed will provide an active public domain space. The proposed walkthrough between Walker Street and Little Walker Streets is intended to be shared with number 144 Walker Street, and this will also provide a better public domain outcome for the space. The third point related to the alleged inconsistency with section 9.1 directions. These matters are comprehensively addressed at pages 79 and 80 of the APP planning proposal document. The site-specific clause is the only mechanism that can be utilised to ensure the orderly, consolidated future development of the land as set out in the PP. The fourth point from council's report relates to site-specific merit. And in this regard, I note the proposal will improve or make only minor changes to shadows on Walker Street, and there's no additional overshadowing of parks. An amended feasibility report was also prepared by Colliers International, Architectus and APP, which sets out scenarios with respect to feasibility, and we encourage the panel to take this into consideration in their assessment of the planning proposal. The fifth point is once more concerned with shadows, and in this regard, I repeat my earlier statements and note that Marco will consider this further from a design perspective. The final point relates to owner's consent. On 29 March 2021, we wrote to council clarifying that there is no legal requirement that owner's consent is obtained for this planning proposal. And as part of the additional material lodged in February 2022, we provided a letter with copies of all correspondence between the applicant and 157 Walker Street. We've still not received any response to any of this correspondence. I note that there are representatives from 157 Walker Street present today, and we encourage them to respond to any or all of this correspondence if they wish. Those are my submissions. I guess in general, we consider that all of the matters and all of the points that are raised in the council report have been considered and addressed in the planning proposal documents and the additional documents that were submitted in February of 2022. And we encourage the panel to take into account these documents in their assessment.
Thank you very much, James. Is it Jacob that's going to be, or Marco that's going to address us next?
Yeah, I will jump in, Marco.
Marco, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for your time and thank you for the opportunity to address the panel. I'd like to, I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to share screen, but if
yes,
I'm not,
yes.
I'll okay, good.
You may share the screen. Yeah.
Thank you. So all of this information has been provided and so it's nothing new, but it's worthwhile just talking about some of these items while we, you know what I'm referring to. It's a little bit easier. So I'd just like to talk to just a number of points just in regards to the public domain improvements and setbacks in particular. Now, this particular scheme is a result of, you know, over 2.5 years worth of discussions with the council in which there were draft public domain documents that since have been accepted, and obviously a raft of changes notwithstanding the latest ones which still are in flux in regards to the setbacks. But I think in terms of assessing the site on its merit and its sort of unique location, there are a couple of really important elements that really inform the setbacks. One in particular is the northern setback, which we are proposing to be a 0 meter setback, effectively building on a boundary. That's something that we have flagged with the council a number of times, and we believe that.
Sorry, this is to 157, isn't it? To 35, to 15.
Between 157 and 161. So
Yep.
So to the north of the site, there are two smaller sites, effectively 161 and 165. Those two sites, in terms of LEP heights, are substantially of a lower height. And the reason for that in LEP is because the solar amenity to the Doris Fitton Park is reliant on those sites. So if you compare the massing volumes between these two sites, unlike many other sites in North Sydney, there is more than 100 meter level change. And in reality, the sites to the north of subject site are unlikely to be developed more than 50 odd meters in height. So there will always be that differentiation between the scale. So we note that both with the current controls, which allow 0 meter setbacks, as well as the proposed controls which the council has put forward, they're talking about a tower separation as the main instigator for those things, given that the northern site will never be able to be developed as a tower without effectively overshadowing everything in its site. We believe that a 0 meter setback is entirely appropriate. We have discussed this with the council previously. Obviously, there has been a change in terms of some of that commentary, but we believe that both an appealing facade as well as the appropriate articulation of the mast could be achieved purely through the current condition in terms of the LEP, and the proposal reflects that. The other comment I'd like to make, just in terms of the Little Walker Street setbacks, again, this is nothing new. It has been a best part of discussion with the council over the last few years, and we believe that the proposal is again entirely in line with the public domain improvements and a future vision for the public domain. The future vision, which started with a public domain document that was done, sort of the Placebook document that was done in October 2018 from memory, and then obviously the subsequent public domain strategy, which is passed in September 2020, propose Little Walker Street as a public shareway, and one of the key north-south links, obviously linking Doris Fitton Park, one of the few green spaces, down to the train station. If you look at these images here, the current arrangement is extremely narrow streets. It's less than 8 meter wide, curb to curb, with no footpath, and a really harsh pedestrian environment, or impossible pedestrian environment. If you walked around there, you can see you have to jump on and off the curb just to navigate that. And what the DCP controls currently suggest is basically a 0 setback podium built to boundary, about 2 to 3 story high, and then a setback above that. What a proposal has done, and this was also in discussion with the council, to create effectively an inverted setback, a 5 meter public domain zone within the footprint of the building, recessing the floor plate, activating that edge, and effectively creating a much safer and much more realistic urban environment. And this is just superimposing our proposal, which obviously creates east-west through site link. It also erodes that podium throughout the entire footprint to create an semi-enclosed and open public domain spaces that allow us to effectively occupy the entirety of the podium. So some 45% of the site area is actually accessible to public 24/7, and then also allows us to do this creation of public domain that would create a safe pedestrian link between Walker Street through Little Walker Street and to Doris Fitton Park. as opposed to the DCP controls, which basically would block that and create a zero setback, create a 600 mil wide public domain. And one of the key controls there, and this is probably architect's background and knowing intimately this site and being part of a lot of these studies ourselves from urban design point of view, but a main point of the podiums is to create a scaling device to the public realm. And if the public realm is really 600 mil wide, that scaling device is dubious at best. And we believe that creation of east-west through-site link and also widening of that north-south connection to the Doris Fitton Park really links into the public domain strategy, connection into the metro, and really extension of the laneway pathways, which is something that was initially discussed with council as well and suggested on this side, so which this proposal is reflecting to. And this just shows you the red is the public open space increase, and the blue zone is the semi-enclosed public open space that's again 24/7 open, and it allows us for disabled link because there's a big level change between those two sites as well. The final point I just like to make was just in terms of the access to sunlight and to Little Walker Street. And I know a lot of these comments were done before some of these technical assessments have been done by us, and so that obviously needs to be captured in formal way. So we have done a detailed sun access analysis of Little Walker Street, comparing the proposal to the DCP, sort of a podium with a tower setback. The difference is only noticeable midwinter, and to be honest, only a computer can notice this because it's less than 2 minutes difference in terms of solar access between the two comparisons. And you can see the area is kind of here in this corner there where you have this little bit of yellow as opposed to a little bit more blue. And what we have also done is, because this was obviously quite telling, we've also done a sky view analysis, which is a sky view factor analysis of Little Walker Street. And from these 3 points, with point A obviously benefiting the most from that view over towards the harbour, I guess, to the east and Doris Fitton Park, and point C being probably the most enclosed. To be honest, it's a very negligible difference. I mean, obviously, no matter what we do, is a pretty narrow walkway with a massive, pretty large towers right next to it. And to be honest, the setback when you're talking about that height of the building in a 8-meter wide laneway, what's perceivable is really mostly what's in that sort of at the human scale rather than 170 meters up in the air. But even from the sky view analysis, in some areas there is a negligible reduction, 0.2%. Again, this is computer level of detail. And then in the actual area where point C, where you actually deep into that laneway, there's a small improvement with this by virtue of through-site link and slightly different setback. So to be honest, there's a lot of evidential, and this is just comparing the two massing and then the sky view analysis, whereas this future context as well in terms of if all the other sites are developed. So we've done that study, which in some areas even shows a small increase, but again, the reductions are less than 0.1%, which is extremely negligible. So in our opinion, we believe that through the discussions with the council, obviously we provided all the public domain improvements, and in terms of the balancing of the setbacks, we have even with a with a reverse tower footprint to the Little Walker Street, we think there's a public domain benefits. Now, having said that, obviously we have a compliance setbacks to Walker Street as 5 meters, and one thing that we have acknowledged previously, we have done a contextual study of Walker Street. We are cognizant of what's happening on the other side of the road with 110 Walker, the recently approved, the 88 Walker, and some of the other areas in the context. It's evident that the 5 meter setback would be unprecedented because all the other setbacks are ranging between 2 meters or 3 or 4 meters, depending on different sites. So if there is a benefit of trying to align that setback and reducing it our client would be open to potentially reducing that setback and shifting the tower form, which would slightly increase the setback to Little Walker Street, and potentially reduce slightly the Walker Street setback to be more in line with the contextual tower forms around the sort of to the across the road and obviously to the north and south of our subject site. So that's something definitely that could be further investigated.
So just go back to the slide that you had put up before, in between this one. Yes, that's right. No, the massive.
Sorry,
No.
the solar one.
Yep. Keep going. Sorry. No.
Earlier, okay. Sorry.
No. Just the one after that. Okay. The next one. And you're saying, okay, no, no, okay. That was the building masses from an aerial view.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
One before that, one after that, I think it was.
Okay.
That one. Mm-hmm.
So this is showing in blue, just approximation of some of the LEP masses, obviously, within the context.
And just go back to the one where we see Little Walker Street and the building. Building comes back out to the boundary after having the setback at the ground level. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Right.
So we have a 5 meter. It's effectively an inverse podium, and that came in through the discussions with the council as well. Obviously, some of the planning officers have changed since our early discussions, but the intent was to create a through site link in east-west direction. Obviously, that has been now captured in the subsequent urban design strategy documents as well, and the setbacks both at the ground level in east-west direction as well as the above reflects those discussions. And then in relationship to the Little Walker Street, there was a request for the active frontages, which we have addressed, as well as the through site connectivity, disabled access, and that increase of the public footpath, which previously was 600 millimeters wide or 60 centimeters with quite a lot of poles and street furniture. And by creating a 5 meter setback, that allows us to have a safe pedestrian connection without having to step onto the public domain. Now, we acknowledge the intent of the podiums is really to create a scaling device to the street, but given the narrow nature of the street and given the tall nature of the tower and a really harsh environment, the 600 millimeters of the public domain, other than the street itself is a exceptionally harsh relationship to that streetscape.
Mm-hmm. And then your setback on Walker Street is 5 meters.
Correct. That's compliant, but obviously the two adjacent sites, either 3 or 2.5 on the other side, and then across the road. I'm not sure what the current approval for the 110 Walker is, but we obviously are familiar with 100 Mount Street, which is 2.5. 88 Walker, I'm not sure that setback there, if any. And then obviously there's a new proposal across the road as well. The 100 Walker, which I believe has been lodged, so I'm not sure of the status of that. But certainly if you look at the Walker Street setbacks in terms of the context, most of the, well, if all the setbacks are effectively less than 5 meters, so we would be the first one to have a larger setback.
But not at this height, yeah.
Correct.
Current buildings, yeah. Thank you. All right, now, do any of the panel members have a question of Marco? Ken or Peter?
Yes, Madam Chair. Just with this scheme or this planning proposal, it has, as well as increasing the height, it then has included, I think, about 6-7 criteria which will control the design, and then we have a very worked up design for a finished product. What input, if any, has the owner of 157 had into the scheme, given they're a part landowner and in fact own bigger portion of the land.
So to my knowledge, obviously we've dealt with a planner and a project manager, but I believe that that was purely directed by 153. I'm not aware of any input from 157 to this particular scheme.
Okay, so can we just to follow on from that question, can we just go to what the massing is on 157? Because this proposal is predicated on the sites being amalgamated.
Correct. So in terms of, let me just see if I can find a good image in that. Okay, so you can see it here. So effectively on 157, the setback to north is 0 setback. So
no, that's okay. That's 153.
So this is this volume shows both 153 and 157 combined.
Okay, yes.
So 153 would be the first third of this volume, and 157 would be the remaining 2/3 roughly. So effectively, the setback in terms of 157, on its own within this volume is obviously to north and south, is boundary to boundary. In terms of Little Walker setback, again features that negative podium at 5 meter, and then 0 setback, and then a 5 meter setback to Walker Street. So it's fair to say that by virtue of amalgamating site, the majority of the mass is within 157, because obviously the 153 also has that east-west through site link, which obviously is irrelevant to where the site link to the station is. Obviously, there's no point putting on 157.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Peter, do you have further questions?
No, that's fine.
And Ken?
No, I have no questions, Jan.
Okay, then, rightio. And do we have anyone else presenting on behalf of the applicant? Thank you. Yes, do we have anybody else presenting on behalf of the applicant? Jacob? Or James? Or Marco?
No, Madam Chair, I believe that's all.
Not from our side. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, Jacob here. I'm presenting on behalf of 157. When the time is right. if you want me to speak now.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Marco, and thanks, Jan. Good afternoon, panel members. I'm Jacob Dwyer from Ethos Urban. And as I said, I'm here today on behalf of the owner of 157 Walker Street, which is part of the land subject to this planning proposal. And thanks for the opportunity to address the panel. The owner retains their previous objection to the proposal. And
actually, you're breaking up a little bit. Can you?
Oh, sorry.
Just hold the microphone further away.
Further away.
Okay. Test. How's this? 1, 2. Test. Any better?
Can you hold it steady? Do you need to have the microphone, or?
Just leave it where it was.
Yeah, just leave it down. Should work.
Sorry. I get criticised for it not being loud enough. So
no, that's much better if you don't.
How's this better? Okay, perfect. Apologies. So the owner of 157 retains their previous objection to the proposal and has not consented to the lodgement of the planning proposal. And obviously we do note James's earlier comment that owner's consent isn't a strict requirement for a planning proposal. 157 Walker Street is held by a managed investment trust that purchases, holds and repositions assets. The owner is not a large-scale developer and does not have aspirations to amalgamate with 153 Walker Street for a significant redevelopment. If the owner was to be considered a developer, their MIT status could potentially be jeopardized due to their ownership of the asset in a trust. The owner of 157 Walker Street has recently undertaken minor alterations and additions to improve the asset's offer and intends to hold the asset and benefit from the developing North Sydney CBD, including the upcoming metro station. This planning proposal seeks to include an incentivisation clause for amalgamation with 157 Walker Street, despite the owners having no interest in amalgamation and redevelopment. If the owner were to ever pursue amalgamation and redevelopment of their own site, there's a chance it would be more likely with the site to the north at 161 to 165 Walker Street. The incentivization clause proposed means a planning lever is potentially being used by the proponent. And if the owner of 157 Walker Street did ever want to pursue higher FSR or a larger development scheme, they could be potentially forced into negotiations with the proponent at higher prices. And if the incentivization clause is written only with the adjoining owner to the south in mind, it makes it a bit harder for 157 Walker Street's owners to consider any other future amalgamation plans that could be brokered, since the controls are essentially written with incentivization in mind for only one side of the site. The proposal site is also in a constrained mid-block location, and we agree with Council's original assessment the proposal does not exhibit site-specific merit. Given the above, and as stated previously, the owner of 157 Walker Street objects to the subject planning proposal. Thank you for your time.
Very well. Okay, thank you. And I do notice that we have the owner, the owner of 157, Mr. Miller, but you're here observing. Is that correct? You're just on mute. You're on mute, Mr. Miller. Sorry, Mr. Miller, you're on mute. Yep. You're on mute still? Still on mute?
Can you hear me now?
We can, yeah, thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to give you the opportunity if you wanted to. It's not compulsory. I know, I do notice you are observing, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity, if you wished, to respond.
I don't agree 100% with Jacob. With the we've been talking for the last 2 years, myself and Marprop, about the connecting the two buildings together. And Nathan Michael, who was the one who represented Marprop, said that, look, if we can work this out and get a good proposal, we'll be incentivized. So I can't really concur with what Jacob Dwyer was actually saying. So I'm a bit confused. Everything else in the meeting's been wonderful, but Jacob Dwyer's said things that just aren't consistent with what we've been doing for the last 2.5 years with Nathan Michael, who was his predecessor. So that's all I'd like to say. That we've even got letters, which Elise will show you, where they've said to us, okay, if you get this proposal through, we'll work with you and incentivize. So I'm confused with what Jacob's saying. That's all I'd like to say, Jane.
Okay, then, thank you. Now, Nathan Michael was listed as registered to speak, and I've heard, Jacob, that you said that you're speaking on his behalf, but you're from Ethos Planning, and Nathan was the manager of Marprop. Now, Marprop is still the proponents of it.
So yeah, Nathan Michael is representing Marprop. He instructed me, essentially. I'm not sure if Rick can better speak to the arrangements between Marprop and the owner.
Okay. It probably
Chair,
would have been of assistance if he had been here. Yes.
Madam Chair, would it be possible for me to briefly respond to some of the issues raised by Jacob?
How is this going to assist us? I'm just wondering at this point.
I'm in the hands of the panel. I just wanted to note basically that many of the things raised by Jacob went to financial matters, which from our perspective, I guess, went beyond necessarily some of the planning considerations.
Well, that's what I was about to say that, but anyway, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I may, under the Planning Act, there's no consideration of financial implications. Some people get a rezoning and they get the benefit. Some people get rezoned down and they may suffer. From our view, the panel should be concerned about the proper planning outcomes, which pursue the orderly and economic use of the land. There is, in fact, an uplift for 157, and that is to their benefit. And if they don't want to take that, then perhaps an incoming party at a later date may take that benefit. in summary,
I mean, the difficulty that we have here is that it is what we've got before. It is predicated on the two sites being amalgamated. So it's a rather different situation to many others that where you're just talking about a council-initiated rezoning as such. All right then, okay. And I noticed that you have a suite of controls that you're promoting be included in the LEP. So I just need to understand, I don't know who wants to discuss this, Jacob or James or Marco?
Yeah, happy to discuss those. Yep.
The reason why is because, as you know, the department doesn't look favourably at including these types of controls within the LEP as such.
Yep, we understand that. Obviously, the controls are attempting to describe the outcome of those discussions and really lock in the public domain improvements, the open to air through site links, the setbacks, and also the volumetric controls. Also, what the tower, in terms of increased height, does, it effectively matches the solar plane to the park, which is one of the protected zones. So rather than establishing an RL as a LEP control, which obviously doesn't capture that solar plane angle, we have reflected in our envelope controls the solar plane accurately to create no overshadowing of the little park across the freeway. So basically, what they do is, I guess, lock in the envelope as well as the public domain improvements, and also assure that there is the intent of the previous LEP controls is still maintained in terms of the protection of the protected public zones.
So then you're not advocating that we have a complementary DCP to achieve these because of inconsistencies that would be created. Is that right?
Sorry, that's more of a sort of a technical matter. You could, I guess, have both an LEP and a DCP that matches those things, but I think at this stage the planning proposal just locks in the envelopes. Yep.
Okay, right.
But yeah, I guess I mean, if the planning panel believes that accompanying DCP controls would be beneficial, then that certainly could be considered.
Okay, then. So do we have any further questions from the panel members?
So just following up from what Marco said, so if you took all those controls or proposed controls out of this, then you'd be left with a planning proposal just to increase the height, which the council have indicated that they probably wouldn't object to. That's my understanding, is it?
Sorry, this is probably more of a planning discussion maybe for James in terms of the technical sort of description of it. But I guess yes, one is that obviously it's critical to provide the public domain improvements. It's critical to lock in the setbacks. I mean, this is architectural background, right? Talking to planners, so I'm slightly out of my depth here, Peter. But in terms of what we believe is required to create public domain improvements, I think the setback controls are pretty relevant to that. But in terms of the variation to LEP, is obviously the height is the relevant clause in terms of the LEP variation itself. But we certainly like to, I think the opportunity here is that through encouragement of amalgamation and through the encouragement of this planning proposal, it locks in a number of elements, the public domain improvements, the setbacks, and height being the variation to the LEP, yeah. Correct? Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Marco.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. And Marco, Ken, do you have some questions? No, you're fine. Good. Okay then. Rightio. I'll just allow you, if there's anything further that you would like to present to the panel before we close this matter. James, I'm just giving you all an opportunity, James, Jacob or Marco, to address the panel on anything further if you feel it is appropriate.
Yes, Madam Chair, I might just add, of course, it's our view that the material presented to Council and the subsequent material addresses all the matters raised in Council's report. Alternatively, we do also note that the matter is currently the subject of a rezoning review, and it would be our submission that the panel may wish to let that take its course, and if you are opposed to the application, not refuse it at this time and let the rezoning review process take its course.
I just can't quite understand. It's a bit like if one appeals to a court on a DA, that doesn't mean that Council no longer consider it. So I'm just trying to understand why would you urge the panel to do that?
Well, it's just our view that.
I mean, is that a legal view? I mean, I noticed that you're from
No, it's more of a procedural comment, Madam Chair.
Okay, so there would not be any error in law in matters going parallel, which often happens in the planning process.
That is correct, but our submission is that from a procedural perspective, we would prefer to have the rezoning review process take its course.
Well, that would still take its course. This is quite independent of your application there, I would have thought. So I just try and have some difficulty in understanding what that would do. But anyway, that's okay. So nothing further that you wish to add, Jacob or Marco? No? Thank you. And thank you all for assisting the panel in its deliberations, and we will be making a recommendation to the Council. Our report will be on the internet within the next week. So I just wanted to thank you all for taking the time to address us today on what is a very significant planning proposal. As I said, in about a week's time, I would say at least within a week, there will be the panel's determination, or rather recommendation to the Council. This panel will be deliberating to make its recommendation later today. So, but it will be finalised within the week. So thank you very much, all of you, for attending and assisting the panel. So that matter we will draw to a close and move on to the second item on the agenda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
So the second item on the agenda that we have today is in respect of all land that is currently zoned R3 in the local government area. There was an amendment to the Council's LEP from memory July last year, whereby residential flat building a permissible use within the R3 zone. And the report to the panel today is in respect of changing that in the light of, in particular, a court judgment and other concerns. So I would invite, we don't have anybody registered to speak on this matter. I just checked in the ether, there's nobody else on, but there's nobody online who wishes to take the opportunity to address the panel on this matter. Rightio, I'll take it that nobody wishes to address the panel. So the panel will be making its recommendation to the Council, and that will also be on Council's website within the next week. So that formally closes the meeting of the North Sydney Local Planning Panel in the consideration of these two planning proposals. So at 12:45, the meeting is closed.